Dear Mr. Franks, I met Mr. Franks at Susie's birthday party.
See that gentleman over there, Aditi, blowing balloons?
Susie had told me.
He's old Frankie, my grandpa's closest friend. Lives in the home for the aged. He must be 80 at least.
I took a great liking to Mr. Franks the moment I started talking to him. He had the most interesting stories to tell. His anecdotes kept us laughing and amused throughout the evening. As I rose to get back to my school hostel, he said,
Why don't you come and see me at the home sometime?
From then on, I met Mr. Franks every Wednesday. Wednesday was my day off from the school hostel. I would spend the morning at Susie's, and after lunch, I'd walk down to the home, sometimes with Susie and sometimes on my own. He would be relaxing in his garden, curled up in a cane chair in the warm winter sunshine. Susie and I would troop in, chattering shrilly like a couple of magpies.
Ah, come in, ladies.
Mr. Franks would straighten up and ask us to sit down. He had been an expert gardener in his younger days, and he had a beautifully kept garden. Mr. Franks had served in the army, and most of his anecdotes were a hilarious mixture of botanical and military life. One day I fell ill. Viral fever had been raging in the school, and I was taken to the infirmary with a high temperature. Lying in bed, I realized it had been almost 2 weeks since I had seen Mr. Franks. Just then the nurse walked in.
Someone to see you, miss.
Behind her ambled in old Mr. Franks. I was delighted to see him.
So the bug got you too. How do you feel now, lady?
He said, handing me a bunch of dahlias.
Thought something must have gone wrong, so I asked Susie and came along to see you. These flowers are from my garden.
I thanked him for the flowers and for coming to see me.
Oh, not at all. Now get well soon.
2 years passed since I had met Mr. Franks. Then one day, just before the winter vacations, I got a letter from Daddy. He had been transferred to Delhi, and I was to complete my last 2 years of school there. He would be coming to Lucknow the following week to take me home. I was very sad when I read Daddy's letter. I thought of my school and my friends, and knew I would feel terrible leaving them. The following Wednesday, when I went to see Mr. Franks, he was weeding the flower beds. He looked at me as I walked in.
What's the matter, young lady?
I handed him Daddy's letter. He read the letter through and then looked at me. My eyes were full of tears.
Now,
He said,
you'll meet new people, make new friends. Is that something to cry about?
I shook my head and said that I would miss my friends here and I would miss him too.
I will miss you too,
He said, holding my hand in his large, wrinkled one.
but we will continue our friendship with letters. You must write to me often.
Of course I would, I told him.
That's my friend.
He said, patting my shoulder. We sat together in the garden. The butterflies flitted and danced among the flowers. Then one butterfly swooped down and perched on Mr. Frank's knee. He watched it quietly as it opened and closed its wings. Then it flew off and resumed its dance among the flowers.
You know,
Said Mr. Franks.
Agatha, my wife, had a very charming belief. She would say that if ever a butterfly came and sat on you, a friend far away had remembered you and sent you his love.
The sun was beginning to set. I got up to go, but I had to reach school before dark.
Well, dear,
Said Mr. Franks.
do write to me soon and tell me all about your new school.
I held Mr. Frank's hands for a moment. My eyes filled with tears again. I said goodbye and walked away hurriedly. Then, for a moment, I stopped and looked back. Old Mr. Franks was still waving to me through the gate. I came away to Delhi. Everything seemed strange and new. New friends, new teachers. I missed my school back in Lucknow and everybody there. But most of all, I missed Mr. Franks. Both Susie and Mr. Franks wrote to me often. Mr. Franks' letters were amusing and always contained some news of his garden and his plants. I would write to him regularly too. My school in Delhi had beautifully kept gardens, and whenever I sat near the flowers, I remembered Mr. Franks. Then one day, Mr. Franks stopped writing. I did not receive any letter from him for a long time. Almost 2 months later, I got a letter from Susie.
My dear Aditi,
She had written,
I feel terribly sad telling you that old Frankie passed away last Saturday. He had been quite ill for the past 3 weeks. He has left you two of his favorite ferns. I shall bring them with me when I come to Delhi next.
I read the rest of the letter through a blur of tears. For the next few days, I could think only about Mr. Franks and the Wednesday afternoons we had spent together. Almost a week had passed since I had got Susie's letter. It was Friday, and I had a geography test that afternoon. I sat revising my lesson under the gulmohar tree. The chrysanthemums and dahlias were in full bloom, and butterflies darted and pirouetted among them. Then suddenly, a little yellow butterfly hovered around me, and finally perched lightly on my leg. I became absolutely still. It moved its wings daintily for a moment, and then flew off to join its friends once again. My heart was filled with joy as I watched the butterflies dancing among the flowers. I knew that somewhere far, far away, old Mr. Franks had remembered me and sent me his love.